Thank you so much for staying with us on TMI this very promising Thursday. Let's begin to look at the conversation we have in front of us, which is about the state of the nation and how we can begin to, at this early stage, start creating perspectives for many of those core issues that we will be confronted with as the year begins. We just quickly want to introduce our guest to you on the program this morning. From my immediate left, I have Prince Greg Ogiogwa. He's a member of the APC, and of course, he's a politician, obviously. It's so good to have you on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year.
I wish you the same. Thank you for coming. And next to him is the man in the red outfit, whatever it signifies. Hopefully, we will find out in the course of the program. Beiso Saze Edigin is the PRO of Edo Civil Society Organizations. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome, Abraham. Good morning and Happy New Year to viewers at home.
Thank you. And next to him is a lawyer and a politician who also happens to be a former member of the Edo State House of Assembly, Friday Ogiraki. Thank you as well for coming.
It's a pleasure to be back here.
Thank you so much.
Compliment of the season.
Thank you. As I said a while ago, you didn't bring us pounded yam.
The power will have load of it.
Okay, gentlemen, let's get it right on the road. 2018 for many people, I mean, so many people had said 2018 will determine what 2019 will look like, especially within the political space. In fact, somebody said in the course of last week that 2018 was the year of over-politicking for Nigeria. So much so that for him, it was even so much of politicking within the 8th Senate or the 8th National Assembly, as it were. Quickly, Prince Ogiogwa, help us do a quick summary of 2018, and then let's do a transition as well.
Very tall order.
Yeah,
because it was a very, very eventful year.
Exactly.
Very, very eventful. You saw the breakup of the APC, as it were. You saw the emergence of the new coalitions, the coalition of united political parties, which finally ended up kind of merging or working with the main opposition, the PDP. We've seen the emergence of about, I think, another 60 or 70 something political parties, which has thrown up a total of over about 80 presidential candidates. Now, this is unprecedented in Nigerian history.
All right.
So we also saw a slow recovery in the economy. Pretty slow. The prices of oil went up, which buoyed up the resources of the federal government, which helps with expenditure and pushing up the economy a bit. But towards the end of the year, we saw that slowing down again. And there were two reasons for that. One of them was the over-politicization of our society. The concentration on politics and the kind of rhetorics and the heat that was generated by political activities actually led to some sort of economic insecurity. It led to capital flight. And because of that, we saw the economy beginning to slow down towards the end of the year. We saw the prices of oil dropping again below the benchmark of the 2019 budget. Now, that portends a certain deficit in our financing for the next year. But the good thing is that the increase in political activity seems to reflect the fact that our people are more politically mature, more politically sophisticated, and that we're more, to borrow the phrase now, articulate, in that we know what we want from whichever government is coming in. And you see more and more the blurring of partisan lines in the demands by the citizenship from the parties. People are no longer talking of what the APC can give or what the PDP can give. It's more like this is what the citizens need. And both parties must find a way to be able to produce this without the bickering that we have seen. Oh, it's the PDP's fault for ruining Nigeria over the last 16 years. It's the APC's fault for not correcting it in the last 4 years. You see, it's all been that kind of bickering. Now, like I said, 2018 ended on a good note because for me, I tried to see the underlying foundations of what the next year would be. And one of the most fundamental was the Purchasing Managers Index, which is an economic tool for envisaging what the economic future will be. Now, the purchasing managers of all the manufacturers, big and small and private industries, have been polled to show a 61.8% favorable disposition towards 2019, which means that all these companies are expanding. They are buying new machinery, they are employing new hands because they foresee that there will be greater sales and greater economic activity in 2019. And that is very good for the people. When you go into a new year, you go into a new quarter, a new season with a sense of optimism. And the only prayer is that we, the politicians, the political elite, do not dampen the natural enthusiasm and optimism and the vibrancy with which Nigerians are going into the new year with our political shenanigans. That's the biggest issue I see that we have. You know, that the politicians don't use, or we politicians do not use politics to disturb the lives of Nigerians, because the politics at the end of the day and governance is only a small part of our social life, our economic, spiritual, and communal lives. And they tend to use politics to divide us, just like they use religion and so on and so forth. And that disturbs our lives and stops us from progressing at the rate at which Nigerians have the natural potential to do so. So it's the prayer that, you know, and we must too not allow ourselves to be drawn into the illusion of saying because it is APC or because it is PDP, and if it is either do or die.
So in summary, you see a promising 2019 on the basis of your analysis?
Absolutely, completely so.
Let me come to it again. I mean, 2018, for example, you are a civil rights icon, as it were, for want of better words. I mean, you and your other civil activists protested against many of the social and political issues we deal with in Nigeria, starting from our state back at home, particularly as it has to do with the power sector. But beyond the power sector, you came up hard against many of these things you perceive as not being normal. How much of progress do you see, and as we go into 2019 now, what difference will that make ultimately?
I think we've engaged in many of these issues you mentioned. Aside the issue of the power sector, aside the things that have to do with the power sector, we have also explained the issue that has to do with transparency and accountability in government. That has been a major concern to us. Now, because we believe when this present administration was coming on board, one of their major focus in the whole matter was that they were going to fight corruption headlong. But we in trying to engage government at different levels to see how citizens can have access to relevant information that has to do with fiscal expenditure becomes an issue to us. For instance, we are even in court presently with the state government on certain projects. But like there were some police stations that were being executed by a super deck, for instance. They were abandoned. We saw some of these things prior to 2016-17, where there was this uprising, crime. I want to look, some of these things were actually put in place to ensure that the law enforcement agencies could have kind of conducive environment to carry out their operations. Why are these projects abandoned? Now we took up this matter and began to make a query. We wrote an FOI request letter to the agency or the commission here to give us information concerning these projects. We saw them not coming forth. They rather went to court to defend what we were trying to do. And this has been some sort of challenge to us. Now there's another one we have done with even with C4 projects. We were also in court. Some projects that were done in a manner that seems that corruption actually took place in some of those projects. We requested, let's give us details. Let's see how much was projected. What were the specifications for this project, so we can know to assess if corruption actually took place or not. We also have a problem. As I speak to you, we are even in court. So our major concern has always been this present administration have not been able to open up to us how our commonwealth is being spent. And I don't think that is good for democracy. That has not made us to move further from where we were before. Because we want a situation outside a government coming up to say, look, we want to do X, Y, Z, or we have done this and that. We want a government that will be open to citizens. So citizens can participate to know, look, I'm a taxpayer. I will pay tax. Let me see how government is being using my money to draw development to me. But you see, the government is shielding some of this information from us. And that is not a progress as far as we are concerned. We expect that the APC government, we are at the federal and the state level, should be able to join us to fight anything that has to do with corruption and anything that has to do with corrupt practices. But from all indication, from their disposition so far, they have not shown that there is this willingness or eagerness to actually fight corruption. We want to issue with
Niger Delta Development Commission.
There's other projects we have also encountered in this state. Even when I was from this was Promise School here, we went there when the construction was ongoing. We saw that they were using substandard equipment and materials in conjunction with the ERO, and that is the.
How do you determine materials that are substandard? How do you do the assessment?
We were working in collaboration with ERO. It's an arm of Nigeria Engineering.
The NSC, Nigerian, okay,
yes,
Society of Engineers.
We were working with the state coordinator,
okay,
or inspectorate. Then they go with us when we are going for inspection. Those people evaluated the project and said, no, this project is substandard. So we took up a case like that. As I speak, that project has been abandoned. It has been abandoned as I speak. I even drove past the welcome to studio. That building has been left. The one that primary school is it Igosa here? It has been abandoned. Now these are issues that have become a problem to us as human rights activists. We want a system where citizens should own the system. Citizens should be part of the budgeting process. Citizens should know how much government has paid, how much they have spent, and what projects are they doing. This should be information that should be made available to citizens. Now, but when they run government these days, it's like a personal thing. They are running like a personal business, and it ought not to be so.
Okay,
an open government.
I'm going to come back to you in a bit, but let me talk to Barrister Ogiriake quickly here. Time and again, we've heard that corruption is fighting back, because he made an allusion to the issue of corruption and how that they, as civil rights activists, are making frantic efforts to entrench transparency and accountability. But in a situation where corruption is fighting back, how do you deal with that reality?
Well, I do not subscribe to that very escapist position.
Is that what it is, escapist?
It is an escapist position. Because first and foremost, let us reckon with the fact that this year, 2019, is an election year for Nigeria. And in 2015, when there was a change of government, change in all ramification of that word, in the sense that a ruling party, as at that time, was displaced by another party. And that party that took over power, the basis upon which the people entrusted it with their mandate was predicated on the fact that they will be more responsible, they will be more up and doing, they will be more effective and effectual in the matter that concerns the state, particularly this issue of anti-corruption.
Right.
And what have we found? You see, when we talk about corruption, or when the idea that is seemingly suggested by this government is the fact that to fight corruption is to chase and be seen dramatizing either the persecution or prosecution of politically exposed persons by way of media hype, by way of using the so-called war to indict and demonize perceived political opponent. For them, that is anti-corruption fight. But alas, I will say here that how so wrong they have been. Because as we speak, Nigeria is still very much endemic in corruption. And that is why today they are telling you that they are not able to do this job because corruption is fighting back. And like I said before, it is an escaping position that I will not subscribe to, and I do not expect any reasonable Nigerian to subscribe to.
Let's get a bit more specific. Would you say with some iota of sincerity that this government has recorded some success, no matter how small you may think it is, as far as the fight against graft is concerned?
Well, you see, for me, the process is as important as the result. It is not to suggest that, oh, people are returning looted fund. It is not to say, oh, because XYZ persons who have held position before and all of that have been invited by the anti-corruption agencies, maybe EFCC or ICPC as the case may be, and they are being interrogated. Some people have been hoodwinked. by the fact that because they belong to some kind of opposition party. That being the case, for them to be safe, they had to jump ship from their party to another party, all because of this approach to the anti-corruption. Anti-corruption law is not being used as an instrument of blackmail, of perceived opposition element. And for me, that is not a hygienic way of tackling the endemic social problem of corruption. So I am not going to be to lend myself to the claim that, oh, in the area of anti-corruption, this government has achieved so much, or a milestone as the case may be. I will not subscribe to that, because I am saying that the approach adopted, they themselves have even told you. Before that, the government is saying corruption is fighting back at them. You know, is to suggest that they have admitted failure in that effort. They have had to quarrel with so many other supposed partners in the effort at fighting corruption. That is to you heard when the president said, "Oh, the judiciary is not helping matter. The lawyers are not helping matters," and so on and so forth. But the point I want to make is this: if you want to fight corruption, all of us must be involved. And it must be such an inspiring fight that it will not take the fact that, oh, Magu somewhere in his office in Abuja or wherever is inviting one person or the other to EFCC. That is not the kind of what we are talking about. You know, let me give you an instance to tell you why I still score this government on the issue of anti-corruption below 20%. There in our state here, I will use that as a classical example. A man, an ordinary citizen, went to court to ask, or asking the court to compel the so-called anti-corruption agency to investigate alleged misappropriation of funds, corrupt enrichment levied against the former governor of this state. Why did we have to go to court? A mere petition to EFCC was sufficient. But what have they done? They have successively given cover and tend to trivialize the fact and the seriousness inherent in that position that this ordinary citizen, like I said, have taken. Why is the government still isolating some individuals only because they belong to the ruling party from the so-called anti-corruption war? So, why did what's it called now? EFCC even had to go to court to contend or to protest the application that Adam Oshobole must be investigated. Investigation by itself is not necessarily an indictment. They have only said, call this man investigating. They have not come out to tell us that they have investigated him. So that for me is a minus, and it makes ludicrous whatever this government has said about anti-corruption.
You know, the good thing is we have a man here who proudly identifies with this government. I mean, the APC-led government.
Yes.
And that's Prince Okegwa. Yes.
And Prince, being the kind of person that I know him to be,
yes,
will not put party interest above a serious national issue like the issue of corruption.
I'm going to allow him weigh in on
yes.
the issue of corruption now. I mean, he just talked about a case, I mean, he just referenced a situation where a former governor ought to have been invited on the basis of a petition to an anti-corruption agency, which is the EFCC. Yes. What does this all say about our institutions?
Well, from what I understand about that particular case,
right.
I do understand that an invitation was issued to the former governor, and I do understand that he has started to make representations, or that he went to court to prevent himself being indicted or being investigated. So I understand that that is a legal matter in court now. Now, I can't go into the specifics of that.
Obviously,
now, because I really don't know that much about it. However, one thing that comes to mind is that there is an increased consciousness about corruption in Nigeria. Whether you think that we're succeeding overnight or not, but there is an increased consciousness of corruption, and that corruption is negative. Now, that is the very first step. When people start to perceive corruption as being an impediment to our development and to our progress, and that it is a negative trait, a negative characteristic within our society, you will find people evolving towards getting rid of it from our society. And that is where we're going to. Now, I personally believe that it is very hard to get rid of corruption by the enactment of laws, because corruption is actually an emotional and personal thing. I will give you certain examples. You see, because I'm a rice farmer, and at times I have to deal with other farmers, I find out that when you are buying rice from them, they will shortchange you. And these are just local farmers. They shortchange you by 1 or 2 kilos. Now, but if you add that up to 500 kilos, you will see what you have lost. And these are just normal, simple people in the villages. That is corruption. Now, if that person gets into a position of authority, tell me that they will not shortchange the country. So it's very easy to say that the governor is corrupt, the commissioners are corrupt, the senators are corrupt. Have you checked out the gateman, your gateman, or your driver, that when you give him money to go and buy petrol, he buys only, 3/4 of what you sent him and keeps the rest of the money? So when my brother starts to look at corruption as if it is a political issue, where one government has to succeed, unfortunately, I have to agree to an extent that the APC made a mistake of making anti-corruption a major part of its plank in governance, because you cannot get rid of corruption without getting rid of the underlying causes of corruption, which is a lack of social.
So as it stands right now, we are treating symptoms and not causes.
Exactly. Because the basic underlying cause of corruption in public life is a lack of social security. When people feel insecure, then they will take matters into their hands to make themselves feel secure. If a man feels that when I leave office I'm not going to have a house to go to, then he will think of how to get that house before he leaves office.
And improvise.
One way or the other. If he thinks I can't meet my children's obligations, I can't pay school fees at the end of this year based on what I'm getting, then he looks for ways to make that happen. So unless we get rid of that underlying cause, which is a deficiency in our social security systems, then we're not going to get rid of corruption. So for any government to now say that corruption is something that you can legislate against, that you can enforce by laws and by punishment and all, is a distraction. And unfortunately, the APC has gone down that road. And they're going to have to pay the price for it, because we cannot hold ourselves up as morally, morally legitimate in that battle. Because like you said correctly, there are a whole lot of people who left the so-called corrupt PDP and moved into the APC, and they were welcomed. And they were treated as leaders of the party and stakeholders. But the moment they left the APC and moved back, they started calling them corrupt people again. A perfect example was the governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Tambuwa, Saraki and Co. Now, so it shows a certain hypocrisy at that level. But that doesn't mean that it is only limited to the APC, because the PDP itself, is the same. Now, it goes back to what I was saying, that corruption and the fight against corruption should not be politicized like that. It should not be made a plank for governance. It is a personal, moral, social ill that we need to work within ourselves.
Prince Ogegua, let me push you a bit further. No intention to pitch against your party, the APC. But do you share the sentiment that the fight against corruption is lopsided? It is a tool against perceived opponents?
Yes. And to an extent, it is true, yes. But it is a good thing too.
What makes it good?
I tell you why. Because, when you push, there must be a reaction. So I was surprised when my brother was saying that the corruption is not fighting back. Of course, corruption will fight back. You can't fight anything that will not fight back. It's just natural that when there's a reaction, there's an action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. Now, the good thing about it is this. If the APC has set that process into motion of fighting political opponents with the corruption stick, what happens when the APC goes into opposition? Which it certainly will someday. And then we will be on the receiving end. And then you cannot shout anything else. So it is good. Let us all know that when you're in opposition or when you're in government and you go into opposition, you're not going to get away with it. So I think that's the good side of it.
Okay. Let me allow you to catch your breath a little and come to Eddie now. He just talked about social security a while ago. And one of the things civil rights activists push is the issue of social welfare, a system that guarantees welfare of citizenry. How much are we doing along that line? Because every time I raise this issue, what I hear people from the government, the APC government, say often is that now we have the Empower, we have these. They mention a few things. They are laudable, no doubt about it. But are there enough?
You see, we see beyond what some of these patients see. That's why most of our fights are targeted and concentrated and well organized. For instance, some of us think the reason why we agitate for this power sector is because we just want people to have electricity. It goes beyond that. But we know that when there is electricity, a lot of things will happen. We have done a serious study on it that, look, for instance, a lot of people have lost their jobs because there's no electricity. Now, if there's electricity, a lot will happen. It goes beyond that. Some people just say, look, if there's no electricity, I can afford that I better pass my neighbor. Not just that you can afford your habitat pass my neighbor. Because if you afford your habitat pass my neighbor, the amount of service that goes into your cost. And most times, some people can't even afford to even buy the small habitat pass my neighbor generator set. Now it goes beyond that. Now giving some sort of stipends to people is not the issue that will solve this whole issue. Like as he has analyzed, they should look at the underlying problems and resolve them. For instance, if jobs are created, there will be much of crimes in society. Now instead of buying guns, buying vans and gadgets to fight crimes, why don't you just use that money to empower people and see how we can live a crime-free society? Now, as we try to treat the problems, not looking at the remote cause of some of these problems. That has been an issue. The Empower, at the end of the day, give somebody 10,000, 20,000, that cannot solve the issue we have.
But people earn as much as 30,000 and they're empowered with items like tablets, generators.
What we expect the government to do to create that enabling environment, you see the system flourish on its own. For instance, like Nigeria Police Force, you see how they run their operations. Most times we go to a police station, they don't even have a patrol van. Some of them are the ones that even buy uniform for themselves. And you are not telling such a policeman to collect bribe. It becomes impossible. But imagine you are able to empower the Nigeria Police Force as an institution. Even when you want to offer a policeman a bribe, knowing full well that he's not going, knowing that if he's caught, he knows what he's going to lose. Maybe for instance, when there's a policy of government that look, after 5 years, we are listening to the Nigeria Police Force, you are entitled to a house that you pay over time. You have insurance. Your children are going to be taken care by the government. When you get killed in your line of duty, your family will not be thrown out of the barracks and all of that. Even you see the man being committed, you see the man becomes more patriotic to fight for the country. But when you leave this man, you are lying, when a man gives you a budget of maybe 20 billion naira to run his operation, you are now releasing 5 billion naira, and you expect him to make up the remaining 15 billion naira on his own. You are already telling the man to go out here. That's why you see a policeman will hold you and tell you that even when your paper is correct, he's trying to see how to extort you by any means necessary. They can arrest you that you are your own boy, you are with all manner of accusation. At the end of the day, all their aim is just to extort you, because we are not addressing the remote causes of some of these issues. What government should be looking at is what I expect government to be looking at. Should look at those sectors that will bring empowerment, that will bring human capacity development to the people. Not addressing giving people 10,000, 20,000, or going to the market to share all sorts. Even the PDP also did similar thing for youth or something. These are not what we are looking at. Some of the institutions today we have in Nigeria are moribund. They are not functional. Like the power sector is a problem. I was discussing with somebody, most of the products we even buy in the market today are fake. And some of the drinks we buy today are being produced by individuals in their homes. And the regulatory body is there. It's not doing anything. Don't surprise, most of the drinks we take now are all products made in one person's bedroom in Benin here. In a particular area where they sell drinks, they sell a lot of fake drinks there. But the institutions are there, they are supposed to change these things. They are not there. They are not being empowered. And you expect the system to just work. The system cannot just work until the government sit down, because what matters to politicians most times is how to grab power. That's why you see, if you check now, the local government appears not to even be existing, appears not to be in existence, because constitution is more of the state government and the federal government. Now these are grassroots government that are supposed to reach out to people. But if I ask you who is the name of, who is your councillor in your ward, you will not even be able to tell me.
And you had better not ask me.
But what matters to politicians is how do we grab power and make money for ourselves, not how do we better the lives of our people. That's why we have charlatans who have become local government chairmen, who have become governors, who have become whatever, even as ministers. People cannot even articulate issues, cannot even solve problems. They are just there, any salaries, any allowances. Even when you ask, give them a proposal, what they will think is how to convert that proposal to be organized, to be implemented by themselves and their cronies. We have sent proposals to government agencies. At the end of the day, you see them implementing it and they mess it up. Because what they think is, how do we make money from it?
Well, civil society too is complicit. If you look at it that way, civil society is complicit in the fact that a lot of you just spend the time criticizing. Apart from when you say, okay, you bring forward proposals, that is not enough. If the only way you can make change in society is by taking power, if that is what the Constitution lays down, that power is taken by the ballot box, civil society in itself should get behind politicians of the right type. They should even project themselves. You, for example, would make a perfect representative. But you're not going to make that representation by just talking or by just criticizing the system. You're going to have to. Because I find myself at times, you see what people write on Facebook, on social media, and they're criticizing politicians, and you ask them, have you ever gone and paid annual registration, membership of any political party? You find out that they have not. Have you ever tried to contest for any political office? They have not. What gives you the local standing to then criticize somebody who has tried? You see? So you find out that a lot of civil society situations, and I'm not referring to you in particular, because I know the great work you guys do, but I know some of your colleagues in this state as well who have used the civil society as a means of blackmail. To this same NDDC, for example, they have blackmailed NDDC, they have blackmailed this power company as well.
NDDC.
From it.
Yes, you have seen civil society operatives use civil society as a means of blackmail, and government as well. They blackmail government.
Exactly.
You understand? So when you see them being complicit in such social exploitation, they don't have the moral legitimacy to speak any longer. They are part of the problem themselves. So it's not enough for civil society to just blame government.
Well, we're going to talk a bit more about what civil society can do.
Let me clear an impression.
Yes.
That somebody comes up to say it's a civil society. For instance, you can come up tomorrow and say you're a bishop. You have to question that. You can do all manner of things in the name of I'm a bishop. We also have same persons in civil society. But good enough, a lot of us do some of these things that are happening. As like what you are saying now, you know some of these persons you are trying to, you cannot mention their names or there, but you know some of these persons who do some of these things. But the point is that, like you said, we have contributed a lot. Like this security architecture, it's our brainchild. We have a letter to that effect, where we wrote to the governor that look, in 2017 we had this serious criminal
like increasing crime.
We sent this, even the security trust fund and all of that to the governor, which was later implemented. But the bad thing is that when it was time for implementation, the civil society was never invited to bring the full the full design to the government. They implemented it in a way. Okay, for instance, the vehicles that were bought, for instance, these are China-made vehicles.
Should they have bought a Jama brand?
No. Do they have parts? Do they have mechanisms? No, these are things that you can consider. For instance, in the last administration, there were these Suzuki vehicles that were bought for the disbanded bike riders. Can you still find them? Can you still find them today? They are no longer there because they are not passed, no maintenance. Now, people tell you that if you even buy Audi, which we have the parts available in the market, you can go to the market, you see these Audi parts. You bought some of these parts, vehicles for these disbanded bike riders. They can still maintain them over time. But the government most times think they know it all. Most times when we give them suggestions, they run with it and they mess it up.
Okay, now let's hope that will change over time. But let's look at two things quickly, Barrister Ogirahi. Both of them have spoken at length on different issues, core issues. But two things are striking for me from this point where I sit. One is, from what he said, what Edigin said, the death of leadership. It will appear there's so much of absence of leadership.
Yes.
And then you have the issue of a systemic problem. Because every time we talk about a problem in this country, there's a system to it. There's a way it works. So it's as if at a point we're dealing with an issue on the surface,
yes,
whereas there are underlying causes that we're not looking at. So how do we deal with issues like this, where you have absence of leadership, sort of, and then, of course, these issues are systemic in nature?
Yes. Thank you very much. But first, I think my brother, the Prince, miscomprehended me or my position on the issue of corruption fighting back. I did not say perhaps corruption does not fight back where you have a proper fight against corruption. The only thing I said was that in Nigeria, under this administration, there is no fight going on against corruption.
So what do we have instead?
He has said it, is hypocrisy that we are seeing. Is insincerity we are seeing. Is blackmail and persecution that we are seeing. Witch hunting that we are seeing. All of that does not amount to a war against corruption. And I believe we are on the same page on the fact that the issue of corruption, because that was the point I made, should not also be seen merely from the political perspective. Rather, it should be seen as an art towards moral rearmament, value entrenchment, the right kind of values in the system. That is what we expected will be the hallmark of the war against corruption. Integrity, when a leadership says this is it and it should be that way. You cannot have a leadership that tells you that patronize Nigeria. You cannot have a leadership that tells you medical terrorism is wrong, and you find the number one man in that same leadership patronizing medical services abroad. You cannot have a leadership that will sit and watch like the kind of investment we have in the central hospital, as it were in Edo State, where the number one man, the university came here to commission, and up till now they have been hue and cry by the fact that investment is not being put to use, and we have not seen any decisive statement or intervention from that leadership. And that's why I said there is no war against corruption. Having said that, let us come to the issue of the absence of leadership. Clearly, there is no leadership in Nigeria. My brother made the point simply. People are out to help themselves with state resources by gaining access to power, and that is not leadership. You mentioned the issue of social security. You see, you can't be talking of, let us even start with what Jonathan did, the former President Jonathan. He talked about Shopee. I don't know how much relief, so to speak, that Shopee was able to do to the very serious social disorder that we have in Nigeria. Now you are talking about, what is it called now? Empower. You are talking about things like amnesty that was released some time ago. You are talking about all sorts of, there's one they call traders money, I don't know.
There's market money, there's
market money that they are making so much noise about. You see, let us stop being unserious about issues that concern governance. Because we can never be better than the quality of governance that we have in this system. You see, my brother, we are all part of the civil society. Yours is the organized front of it, but we are all civil society. In fact, one major issue that I believe that we should tackle as civil society about the issue of leadership, because we are approaching an election year. We are in an election year, actually. Is the fact that today in Nigeria, this voting or election is all about cash and carry. I needed to see a mass movement of the civil society against the issue of money for vote. Have we seen that happen? You expect the beneficiaries of that very scandalous situation, as it were, scandalous arrangement, to help the fight. I will not see, I do not expect a President Buhari or the APC or even the PDP, when it is their turn, to fight that malice. it is a core responsibility, obligation of the civil society. You know, Prince, you put it succinctly, and that is my take on it. You don't begin to trouble a BDC, as it were, that is a main contractor to government, when you have the regulatory body up there. I expected to see, I've made that opinion at the formal level, Governor Obaseki traveling to Abuja to see his compatriot of the same political party that he is, Fashola, that is in charge of power. I'll talk to you about the misbehavior, if any, of BDC. It is not to make a drama out of the process by saying I will not grant you audience. I expect to see Governor Obaseki going to take that matter up with the Minister of Power. And some we are saying that ministry have been scrapped, and to the best of my knowledge, that ministry still exists. Fashola is on the same political party with Governor Obaseki. He was a former governor, and he is now a governor. Now he is the minister, and you are dealing with a main contractor who is out to make profit, as it were. So that is like begging the issue. What are we talking about here?
You never can tell. There may have been engagements between.
Well, if there have been engagement, you don't take it out. If you know you have taken it up at that level, you don't have to take it up at this pedestrian level. I see it as pedestrian. I see it as begging the issue. I see it as the height of unseriousness and irresponsibility on the part of government. So having said that, the point we are talking about is the fact that there is no leadership. I have a clear expectation. You can't begin to talk about social security intervention when you don't even know the number of people you have in your country. As we speak, the issue of the population figure of Nigeria is still a guesswork in government and in government circle and among us citizens. Why, if we want to start talking about intervention, you must first know numbers of Nigerians that are unemployed. Do you have the figure today in Nigeria? No. Do you have the?
We do. The NBS released a figure.
But that's not
the figure.
No.
Last quarter of 2018.
That is part of the problem we are talking about. When we say there's no leadership, put money into a proper census that will give you an accurate figure of those that are unemployed, the aged, those that are being born. You see, where government works, they take care of their citizens right from conception.
Let's bring an element into this aspect of the conversation, sir. We're talking census now. The last time we had a countrywide census in Nigeria was in 2006. Incidentally, then your party, the PDP, was in power under Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. Obviously, over time, that census had been marred by controversies.
Yes.
Yes, they said the census was politically motivated in the first instance, and then in the middle of it, it was designed to favor a part of the country, a region of the country.
Yes.
That census, again, we were told, was not comprehensive enough to create compartments, as it were, between the aged, the youth, those in different classes, the unemployed, and so on and so forth. And for so many analysts at the time, it was waste of hard-earned resources.
Yes.
It therefore means that some of the problems, or a handful of the problems at least we deal with in this country, are foundational. And most persons point back to 1999, how we started the PDP era for 16 years and so on and so forth. And they say we shouldn't daydream about the ability of the APC to fix all of the issues that arose or had arisen on account of the APC being in power for less than 4 years.
Yes.
What's your perspective?
So the point remains what I'll be talking about. If you agree, as I do, that there's something fundamentally wrong with our census figure,
right,
there is nothing stopping a government, whether perhaps of the same as the one that we had before, but provided there was a change of batting, from repeating the exercise to get the right result. If you didn't do that, then you are compounding our problem. Then you are unserious about the issue of leadership. You see, the point must be made that all of the expectation that we had about a change of leadership. All of the good things that by now we ought to be taking stock, didn't happen because of this fundamental problem we've talked about. My brother, the Combe mentioned the fact that there are charlatans who parade themselves now as political leaders, occupying sacred elected political offices, whereas they did not really secure a genuine mandate of the people. And what is that? Why is that so? Because something is fundamentally wrong with our electoral system. And today we are talking about a Nigeria where the National Assembly spends so much time, 4 times, amendment and reform in the electoral act was sent to this particular presidency. And 4 times he rejected to give us it. And the fundamental issues inherent in that effort towards advancing, they are talking about next level now. This effort at amending the electoral system was actually an effort made at taking the electoral system of Nigeria to the next level. And who are those that fought it? Those that want next level. How is that possible? What kind of a self-contradiction is that? We are talking about a situation whereby if you start running your election from the top, it might become problematic the way it has been in Nigeria. Because once the number one man wins from a particular party, the likelihood of a bandwagon situation arising will happen. That's why, okay, they say let us reorder the sequence of our election. Let us start on the base. So that at the end of the day, perhaps the presidential election will not last because somebody's interest. Somebody is put up personal interest before the overriding national interest. And that is not good at the effort towards putting in place a leadership that can actually tackle the problem of this country and not charlatans as my brother will have it. So now you rejected that. You also rejected the amendment that said, let us see how we can remove the human element, the human factor in our electoral process. Because the more of the human element, the more susceptible to corruption is our electoral system. And today, as far back as 2015, when the so-called card reader was introduced at huge financial implication and burden to this country, only for INEC themselves, with their lawyer that they hired, to go to the court, from the very first tribunal to the Supreme Court, to argue that the electoral and the so-called candidate was not had no place within the Electoral Act. And today, the National Assembly, rising to that situation, has now said, okay, we want it to become a legal instrument. Let it now be empowered by statute. And somebody that says that also suffered the vicious circle of the electoral system, like Buhari rejected assent 4 times. So what are we talking about? Until we do something about the process that generates leadership. You saw the very scandalous events that characterize the different primaries of the different political parties. You saw it. You saw how figures were reeled out at the APC National Convention, talking about the party vote that threw up Buhari as the sole candidate by way of endorsement was even more than what we have seen recorded as voters turnout in all of the years that we have had election in this country. From one political party, they were reeling out millions of Nigerians endorsing from their own party the sole candidacy of Buhari. How ridiculous, how so shameful, and how so scandalous. We have seen situations, because these are things we expected that will be investigated. In the PDP convention at, where did they hold it? Port Harcourt?
Port Harcourt.
People came back and they became richer than what they were before they went to the convention. And they were telling you, oh, this was
meant to be a convention or a trade.
Oh, a bazaar. It turned out to be a bazaar. And it is shameful that these two political parties, major political parties as it were, that seem to hold the destiny of Nigeria in their own hands, are behaving in this manner. So there is no hope. We must do something to the system. And that is why I will challenge my brother. Like I said, we are all civil society, but there's an organized front to the civil society movement. That these are very fundamental issues that we must first tackle before looking at symptoms. Because if you are fighting BEDC over power, when you know that BEDC is just a mere contractor, those who gave out that contract are somewhere resting. Those who are not talking about how to even diversify. How to even diversify the power sector. Do you know the monumental corruption that was inherent in this so-called privatization of the power sector? How all of these people, perhaps from them that have no capacity, not taking charge of distribution, and all of that are not being invested. We are preparing over rot.
We are wrapping up now.
We are preparing over rot.
Those were not under PDP administration.
You see, apart from that,
Yes,
He's also indicted his own party.
No, I'm not about PDP.
He refused to.
I'm not about PDP. I'm ADC.
Okay, that's on the record now.
Yes, on the record, I'm ADC. I'm not, because these two parties have failed this country monumentally. And Nigerians must begin now to look at a new way forward.
Okay.
And what we thought about what we were going to do that, we thought about thought first. Thought about thought first. But our Nigerians do it, looking at that, they have so popularized the electorate today that they are expecting how much will this contestant bring? How much is the other one bringing? That is what the electorate are looking at for.
Okay, let's tie it up now, gentlemen. 1 minute quickly. Yes.
To quickly point out something. You see, leadership derives from the people. If you take an orange and you squeeze it, the only thing you can get out of it is orange juice. You can't get banana or guava or mango juice from it. So if you take a people and you exert it under a process of producing leaders, you can only produce what those people contain. So if you say that there are no leaders in Nigeria, it means we don't have leadership qualities in ourselves, starting from the individual units, the family, the community, and so on and so forth till you extrapolate to the nation. That's one. Two, the issue of vote buying is not sustainable. There's no political party or political class that can sustain it for maybe more than the next 3 or 4 elections. For the simple reason that is that there's not enough money to buy all the votes. When they started vote buying, it usually was 500 naira. Now it's gone up to about 3,000 naira or 4,000 naira per vote. Soon they're going to be offering 10,000 naira. It's not sustainable. And it will naturally evolve and die. And there's no point in us, my brother says he's going to ADC. I'm supposed to be in APC. You are supposed to be in civil society. It's all compartmentalization. We're all dividing ourselves into different groups that really do end up doing the same thing. We need to now start to see ourselves as one, see our issues as one issue which we all need to put our hands together, regardless of what partisan game you are playing, because it's all a game. At the end of the day, it's all a game. What we want is all the same. We want peace, we want security, we want good things for our kids across all political parties, all religions, all ethnic groups. And we need to focus on that. What binds us together is much more fundamental than what differentiates us in the form of political parties, religion, and ethnicity. So the use of political parties as a means of differentiation, or religions, or ethnic groups, or economic status in society as a means of differentiation is false. They are all illusory tactics that the exploiters use to exploit the people. So we have to start, and that's why one thing I agree with President Buhari is that the change actually starts with you. There's no other way to put it. The change actually starts with you. And until we start to change and expect from ourselves the same things we expect from government, the same things we expect from our children, from our churches, from our societies, the same things we expect from them, let us first get them out of ourselves.
Okay, I think that's what we're going to leave it with you. Let's come to you quickly. 1 minute, sir, to tie it up.
I think leadership has a lot to play when it comes to reorganizing the society. Because most times when leaders' body language is being observed, you see the citizen falling in line. For instance, when this president administration was trying to clean up the Ring Road area, they saw the seriousness and they saw how the present governor dealt with some of those guys that became multi-millionaires overnight by collecting taxes from their
on a daily basis.
They saw some of those things. And so people know that this man is a serious-minded man. That if you dare him, you go in for it. Now, at the federal level, like we'll be talking about corruption, fight against corruption, as the President Muhammad Buhari proved to us that they actually want to fight corruption. Like the issue of Babachi and Lawa and all of that, this event made the citizen to even not believe in the fight against corruption. If you had handed those people to EFCC and they were investigated and prosecuted, citizens would not believe that yes, of his sincerity. If carrying out any corrupt practice at my smaller units, I'll be very careful at that level that if the president can deal with even his SGF, means he will not spare me. I become scared of doing anything that will corrupt the system. But leadership must prove that they actually want to change the system. If Mohamed Buhari's children are in public schools with my children, yes, this man actually wants to change the system. If the family attends Central Hospital, just like my kids do, I will know that this actually, not that when you have a headache, you run to America, and you are telling me as a common citizen to build the system when you are not on ground to build the system. You are not convincing me that you also want this country to move forward.
Okay, let me come to Barrister Aguirre here. I'm giving you 30 seconds because you spoke extensively a while ago.
Yes.
So your final words.
The greatest defense that democracy will have is the confidence of the people.
Right.
You see, our democracy is sitting on a very precarious, let me use the figurative term, chair, precariously, because the people, the factor of the people have not been taken into account in the so-called practice of democracy in Nigeria. And what that entails is that when you are in a democracy and you are entrusted with mandate and power, the people must be it all about your concern and interest, how to advance them, how to improve on their lot, how to ameliorate their problem, how to ensure that for the time that God has given them to be alive, they have meaningful existence. So when government do not put in place an arrangement that will make for the realization of those objectives, of those visions, of those ideas, the likelihood is that the people will always want to gravitate towards perhaps the next alternative that will provide that needed government attention, as it were. So don't be surprised when people are talking about Nigerian democracy, when people are talking about the likelihood of even what was it called, some anti-democratic forces intervening in the system, and the people are looking nonplussed. They are indifferent because they cannot relate with it. The government today is still as alien as what we had in the colonial time, and that is not good for us. And that is something we must tackle fundamentally. That people must begin to see government as their own.
Okay, I think that's what.
And not an alien army of occupation. Thank
you so much, Barrister Aguirre. I think that's what we're going to leave this discussion on the program this morning. I would like to thank especially these three gentlemen for coming on the program, beginning with Prince Greg Ogyowa, member of the APC. Thank you so much for coming. And then, of course, Osaze Edegin, who happens to be the PRO of Edosco. And lastly, Barrister Friday Ogiriaki is now a member of the ADC as well as a legal practitioner. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Once again, Happy New Year.